For today's workout, we'll be using a pillow. I'm using a couch pillow, but any kind of pillow should work. If it's a little bit thicker and denser, that will feel better for a lot of the moves that we use it for today. Be sure you have enough space to move around you, and then start seated on your pillow, both legs crossed. See if you can find your neutral spine, meaning that your hip bones are stacked vertically above your pubic bone. Activate your abdominals just enough that you can close the front of your rib cage and center your ribs right on top of your butt bones. Maybe roll the shoulders up and back a couple of times to find a nice wide chest without popping open that front side of the ribs. And feel your head centered right over your shoulders. And feel free to close your eyes. We're going to breathe in and out at your own pace. This will help you let go of any tension in your body. This workout really focuses on mobility, so if we have less tension, you'll move a lot better. And adding in some small pelvic rocks here, we're going to start to tuck the tailbone slightly towards your feet, feeling your abdominals drawing in a little deeper as you breathe out. And as you breathe in, think of growing a little taller, returning to that neutral pelvis with the hip bones right over your pubic bone. Then reaching your arms overhead, grabbing onto one wrist, take a big side bend up and over. Placing your hand on the mat to allow a deeper release. When you're ready, take it to the other side. Think about creating a little bit more space through each rib on the side of your body. Maybe try inhaling as you hold that side bend to create that space in the ribs and each bone in the spine. Exhaling to help you return back to the center. This should feel really good, opening up the low back. Let's take that into a twist. Place one hand on your knee and the other hand on the mat and breathe deeply into that rotation. Still thinking about breathing into the sides and back of the rib cage to really get a lot of oxygen moving through your body. Growing a little bit taller with every breath in, feeling that space in between each bone in your spine. Let's take another side bend. Adding now that rotation to the side bend, turn your shoulders towards the floor. Both hands on the floor for support as you breathe into that back side of your body. Return to your side bend and all the way up to neutral before going to the other side. Really listen to your body each day. If your back is really tight today, you might not have both hands on the mat. This might be a smaller twist. That's okay. Side bending to come back up to neutral. Arms reach out directly in front of your shoulders. And let's move those shoulder blades so they slide away from each other so that the back side of your ribs feels really broad. And then they squeeze together towards that back side of your spine. Do that a few more times, warming up the shoulders and shoulder blades. Then finding the middle of those two movements, start from the top of your head, curling your chin towards your chest as you roll forward onto the mat. Let's roll back up when you're ready and find your hips just in front of your pillow. Knees stay bent. Arms reach forward in front of your chest. Try to sit tall in that neutral spine. Now draw your abdominals in so much that your pelvis starts to roll back towards the pillow. You should feel your low back start to round a little bit. Feet are glued down on the mat. You're feeling a little lift in your pelvic floor throughout this movement. Let's roll back a little bit further and start to pulse. Ribs are curling up an inch toward your thighs, and then you're drawing those lower abs in so much again that you roll back a little bit onto the pillow. Keep breathing. It's totally fine to exhale when you pulse up or pulse back. Do what feels best for you. Now we're going to hold that C curve of the spine and add a twist. Sweep your arm down and back, looking towards that arm, alternating sides. Your goal here is to keep your legs really still as you draw those abdominals in as deeply as possible. We're adding in some focus on your oblique abdominals here with that twisting motion. Those are the ones on the sides of your waist. Let's just take a release forward over your legs before we do another set. We'll roll back up to neutral. Tuck your tailbone as you roll back down. And again, scooping your arm down and back as you twist your ribs around your spine. We're just going to go a little faster. See if you can speed it up without losing any of your stability. If you ever need a break, you can take it. Let's curl up to neutral and scoop your abdominals back to the pillow, rounding your spine again. And another release, stretch your legs straight and fold forward over those legs. Catching your breath, rolling your spine back up, bend your knees. To add a little more challenge here, we're taking the hands behind the head. I'm just thinking of my head lifting off of my neck here as I roll all the way back down onto the pillow, one bone of my spine at a time. And then enjoy that release there. I should feel a little bit of an arc in my spine. Start to shrug your shoulders up toward your ears and then sliding your shoulders down away from your ears. Do that a few times, feeling that space from your earlobe to your shoulder. Before you start to curl your chin toward your chest, use your abdominals to roll all the way back up to seated. Now, if you get stuck, reach your arms forward, grab the backs of your legs, help yourself out. You will get stronger even by doing that. Let's round the upper back over the thighs before we roll up to neutral and do that again. Tuck your tailbone, draw your abdominals all the way in so that you roll back onto the pillow. And this time moving the shoulder blades with your arms reaching straight up to the sky. Just like we did before, they spread apart away from the spine, fingertips reaching up to the sky, and then slide your shoulder blades back towards the mat. Now this whole time, can you feel the support from your abdominals? They're still active here. Draw them in towards your back. This is a scissor of the arms. One arm reaches overhead, one arm reaches towards your hips. And just alternate sides. The goal here is to keep your entire body still as you isolate the movement in your arms and shoulders. We're going to give yourself a gigantic hug. Open your arms wide, get a nice release in the chest, and then really scoop your fingertips as far back behind you as you possibly can. Take a deep breath into that back side of your ribs. Let's do it again. See if you can let go of any tension in your neck and shoulders here. When you're ready, your arms reach up to the sky, curl your chin toward your chest, use your abdominals to roll all the way up, and again, you can grab your legs if you do get stuck. Reach all the way over those legs and then roll your spine up to neutral. Let's add an arm circle here. So tuck your tailbone, scoop those low abs in, arms sweep down to the mat, out to the side and all the way overhead. And then starting from the top of your head, curl your chin towards your chest, keeping a little bit of space between your chin and chest for a nice juicy peach. Let's just try reversing the arms. So they reach straight up to the sky and overhead, out to the side, and then down to the hips as you roll all the way back up. Your goal here is control. How smoothly can you roll down and up so that you're using every single fiber of your abdominals equally? Now let's return to neutral and stretch those legs out in front of you. Let's again roll forward towards your toes, starting from the top of your head. Curl your chin towards your chest. Reach your hands over your feet. And then starting from your tailbone, roll your spine back up to neutral. Going back to that twist we did earlier. And this time you're staying really tall in neutral as you open one arm, spiral your ribs toward that arm, and look towards your hand. This is really just great mobilization for your spine. We're going to add little pulses here to see if we can deepen that rotation. So twist as far as you can, release that just a little bit, and add 2 pulses. Then we're going into a classical Pilates exercise called saw. So twist and hold. Now curl your chin towards your chest. Reach for your pinky toe as if you were going to saw your pinky toe off. That's where this name comes from. We're going to hold that fold forward and add those pulses that we did before rolling back up to neutral and trying it on the other side. Let's see if you can really feel your abdominals working here. So rather than just collapsing onto your leg, if you happen to be really flexible or mobile, think about lifting your ribs away from your thigh, like you're going up and over a ball that is resting on your leg. Once you're even on both sides, let's reach those arms overhead and enjoy a nice release forward. Maybe jiggle those hips side to side, let your low back release, your hamstrings release before rolling all the way back up. Let's move into a little bit of abdominal work here. So we'll lie all the way down. That pillow should be in your low back, hands behind your head. Feel the weight of your head in your hands as if you're resting your head into a hammock. That will help your neck relax. Knees are bent, feet on the mat, and start to just stretch back over your pillow. And then curl your chin toward your chest, curling up just to the bottom of your shoulder blades. Now the pillow is here to help you get a little bit of upper back extension as you stretch back over that pillow. It's going to help mobilize your upper back. And you should start to feel your upper abdominals a lot here. Those are up by your ribs. Let's turn this into a little pulse so it's a little bit smaller than we started with, challenging some of that endurance in your abdominals. Adding the lower body, lift one leg up to tabletop, trying to keep a 90-degree angle at your knee and also at your hip, which will add a lot of challenge for those lower abs. Now check in with your upper body. Can you curl up an inch higher? This is a lot of endurance to hold it, so you'll tend to sink back down onto that pillow. When you're ready, both legs can come up to tabletop. Keep those knees bent as you lower one leg at a time, and I'm flexing my foot here to help me just go a little bit further. You can keep your toes pointed and the movement will be a little bit smaller. Can you speed that up to challenge the stability in your hips? You can look at your hips, and if they're wobbly, slow it down. Find those abs to help you stabilize. And we're going to add in some oblique work here. So one foot on the mat, one leg stays up. Now twist your ribs towards that thigh. And the focus here is your opposite rib rotating towards that hip rather than thinking elbow to knee. Now let's hold that twist, working the lower body again. Stretch that leg all the way straight and then bring it back to tabletop. And again, check in with that upper body. We tend to lose the twist and we tend to sink back onto the pillow as we get tired. So keep fighting to stay curled up and twisted as much as you can. Now, can you keep that leg straight and start to lift it up towards the sky, back down towards the mat? And if that's not feeling good for you, you can go back to what we did before, bending the knee in and straightening it back out. Finally, lower that leg and start to pulse in that twist. Thinking again, rib to opposite hip. Let's come back to the middle. Take a release before we do the other side. Again, feeling the weight of your head in your hands, keeping that juicy peach under your chin. We don't want to yank on the head and squish the juicy peach everywhere. So starting with that nice slow rotation toward the thigh. Thinking rib to opposite hip again to work those oblique abdominals. Now holding your twist, reach that leg straight and bring it back into tabletop. Now you do not have to move your feet the way I am. I like to mobilize my ankle, but if that is messing with your head, just leave it out. It is great to activate your lower leg in one or the other foot position. So either flex your foot or point your toes, whichever you prefer. Keeping that leg straight, let's lift it up and lower it down. Every breath out, see if you can find that deep transversus abdominis. It should feel like you're tightening a belt around your waist. Can you curl up an inch higher for this last little bit? And let's pulse even deeper, a centimeter higher. Breathing it out, you're almost there. And you made it. Take a nice deep stretch back. Arms reach overhead. Let's do that roll up that we did before, this time with the legs straight. Enjoy this stretch for a little bit longer. Feeling all that space through your spine. And when you're ready, arms reach up to the sky first. Curl your chin towards your chest and use those abdominals to roll all the way up and over your legs. Remember that if you get stuck, you can bend your knees, grab the backs of your thighs to help you out. All right, let's do that again. So putting everything together that we've done so far. We're tucking the tailbone and drawing the lower abdominals in towards the pillow as you roll all the way down to the mat. Reach the arms up to the sky first, curl your chin towards your chest, and then find those upper abdominals, middle abdominals, and then lower abdominals as you roll all the way up. So we just did a lot of work for the front side of your body, working those abdominals and hip flexors. Let's do the opposite side of your body now, that back side of your body, all the muscles through your spine, your hips, your glutes. So placement of your pillow is really important here. You want to think of it being directly underneath your abdominals. But depending on the size of your pillow, check a couple of things. Be sure that your pubic bone is not on the pillow. So you want to have your pubic bone off the pillow. Those hip bones at the top of your pelvis, kind of those pointy parts of your pelvis, you do want those on your pillow. And then that pillow should kind of be right around your navel. So you might need to adjust it a little bit, again, depending on the size of the pillow that you're using. If it feels really uncomfortable, that means it's in the wrong spot. So just take a moment. Make any adjustments needed. You might even find you need to fold your pillow over, or maybe even get a smaller or larger pillow. And then we're starting with our hands under our forehead. Your legs are totally rested on the mat, so your knees are a little bit bent. And we're just going to do some pelvic rocks here. So imagine pressing your pubic bone into the mat as your abdominals lift, and then just slowly releasing that back to your neutral pelvis. And the whole time we're here on our belly, we want to think about the abdominals being engaged just enough to lift them away from that pillow. That will support your low back. Now stretch one knee all the way straight and then float your thigh off the mat. We're going to alternate legs. So your foot is on the mat as you straighten your knee. And then think of using your butt to float your leg up. And it's not very big. Everyone's range of motion will be a little bit different. Might only be a few inches. That's okay. And then let's do some reps on the same side. So stretch that leg straight and lift the leg up slowly and lower it down. Do that a few times, and then we're going to do 8 little pulses. Now your goal here is to keep a lot of space through your low back. So the temptation is to sink the low back down towards the mat and try to lift your leg too high. So this is not about how high your leg is, it's about how lifted your abs are. That's going to really isolate your butt. So if you notice you're feeling your low back a lot more than your glutes there, you might just be lifting your leg too high, or you might just need to re-engage your abdominals. Now let's keep your legs on the mat for a moment and work your upper back. Take your arms down by your hips, palms facing in toward your thighs. Think of opening your chest. Focus on your upper back muscles and just float your head and shoulders off the mat. And then with control, slowly lower back down till just the tip of your nose is touching that mat. Your entire arm is floating off the mat here until you lower back down. It's okay to rest those arms on the mat. Now you can make this more challenging by returning your hands under your forehead like we did before. Makes it a little bit heavier load for those upper back muscles to lift. Just check in again with that low back. You're trying to keep a lot of space there, so it should feel like you're stretching your tailbone away from the top of your head. Then add little pulses, so going a little bit faster there for this final set. And then I want you to hold it up. Now just sweep your arms out to the side like wings and all the way back to your thighs. And then bring them back to where they started. And let's do that a few more times. This is working some endurance through all those muscles in your upper back. And it's really challenging on your shoulders as well. Then go ahead and rest your head onto your hands again. Maybe reconnect those abdominals, relax your neck. Doing a little bit more glute work. Both knees are bent. Think of frog legs. Squeeze your heels together and flex your feet. Now nothing really moves. I just want you to squeeze your heels together so much that you activate your butt and then just release. So you can't really see much going on if you're watching the video. I'm truly just activating my glutes and then releasing those glutes. And just like we did before, you're thinking of keeping that space through the low back, checking that your abdominals are staying lifted away from the pillow. That will help you isolate your glutes. Keeping the glute activation, start to lift your knees up, off the mat, and then slowly lower them back down. This is really small. Mine especially are very small. Everyone will be a little bit different, but don't expect this to be huge. It's a very small movement. Then let's stretch those legs long on the mat. My legs are in a little external rotation, meaning that my kneecaps and toes and thighs are rotating outwards towards the side walls. And that's a really great position for beginners here, or if your back is a little bit tight, try that position in the legs. We're going to get ready for some swan. We will build up to a full spinal extension. Hands are on the mat near your shoulders. It's usually more comfortable for me to have my hands off the mat slightly. You'll feel a lot more relaxed in your neck that way. And just check in with those abdominals again, feel them lifting up. Start to lift through your head, your chest, and use your arms for support here. They are absolutely there to help you out. Now slowly lower back down to the mat, one bone at a time. For these first few, I'm just lifting through the upper back. So your ribs, your bottom ribs should still be on that pillow. Really activate your legs here. Now they're straight. They're stretching long away from you as you stretch through the top of the head. And if your back is feeling okay, let's push into the arms to lift a little higher. Draw your abdominals in. You might even lift those hip bones off the pillow. Stretch your legs even further away from you if you can. So again, listen to your body here. When I first did this, it really did not feel good for my back to come all the way up into that full extension. Respect that in your body today. Know that every day will feel a little bit different in this exercise. If you're feeling any pain, you want to go back to a place where there is no pain. Let's take a child's pose to release all of those muscles that we just worked. I'm going to rest my head on my pillow here. So my forehead is resting on the pillow, arms are reaching forward. It's also okay to reach your arms back by your hips if that feels better for you. And I'm just gently rocking side to side to help release through my back. This child's pose should feel really nice. If it does bother your knees, you can absolutely roll onto your back and just hug your knees in towards your chest. You can hold over your shins or under your thighs. Then let's add a little rotation here for that upper back. So reaching one arm underneath your chest. Let your shoulder open up towards the sky, resting on that bottom shoulder as you reach the other arm up towards the ceiling. When you're ready, return to that child's pose and we'll get ready to do the other side. So scooping that arm underneath the chest, opening up your shoulders towards the side wall. Support yourself on that bottom arm and shoulder as the top arm reaches up towards the ceiling. And then coming back to that child's pose again. Those deep, full breaths into the sides and backs of the ribs. And then draw your lower abdominals in so much that you start to round your spine up towards the ceiling, creating a little bit of space between your chest and your thighs. And this is a really nice release through the low back. Working your abs a little bit as well. One last release forward. Let's get ready to do some side facing work. So this time I want you to position that pillow so it is approximately under the side of your waist. And again, if it feels really uncomfortable, just keep adjusting as necessary. We do have those floating ribs near your waistline, so you don't want your pillow jabbing into those floating ribs. If it hurts, it's in the wrong place. Bottom arm is supporting your head. Go ahead and bend that elbow. You could also grab another pillow to place under your head if that feels better. And you're trying to create a straight line from the top of your head through your shoulders, your ribs, and your tailbone, just like we did earlier in that neutral spine. Your goal is also to keep your top hip in line with your bottom hip so that they are vertical, right on top of each other. Now let's bend that top leg. Feel a little activation on that bottom side of your waist, almost as though you want to lift your ribs off the pillow, but not quite. We're going to go right into some clamshells. So we open the top knee, feet stay together for this version, and then slowly lower that top knee back down. Now I have my hand on my top hip. I'm kind of monitoring if my top hip is rolling back. The goal is to keep that top hip right on top of the bottom hip. And this is working those really deep rotators of the hip. They are the stabilizers of your hips. So this is going to strengthen them, make your hips really strong and mobile. Let's add some little pulses here, trying to just get that last couple of inches. Checking if the frontal ribs are closed. It's really easy to pop those ribs open. Now working a little internal rotation of the thigh. So you turn your knees together until they touch. And then going back to that clamshell, the external rotation where you're opening your knees like a book. And again, pelvis is steady the whole time. Ribs are stable. Find that internal rotation. Keep it and press your thigh back behind you. So your goal is to keep your foot a little higher than your knee this entire time. And then really draw your abdominals in as you press your thigh behind your body. And that's going to help you, again, isolate your butt rather than getting into your low back. For this next one, find your leg in a straight line with the rest of your body and start to just lower your foot all the way down to the mat and then lift it back up. Now check out your top side of your waist. We tend to crunch that side. The distance between your hip and rib gets too short. Your goal is to keep it really long from your rib to your hip. Now getting a little bit more challenging here, we're going to kick your leg forward and kick your leg back. And again, this range of motion will be different for everyone. What really matters is that you're stabilizing through your pelvis. So check in that as you kick forward, your butt stays right where it is. And same thing as you kick back. All right, let's take another release. Rest your top leg on the mat. Big side bend onto the mat. And then when you're ready, try rotating towards the mat. Now this can be a tricky position, so give yourself a minute here. You're aiming for both shoulders to face the mat, both hands to rest on the mat, and then depending on how your neck feels, see if you can turn all the way to the other wall and rest your head on the mat. If that doesn't feel good, it's okay to rest your forehead on the mat. It's okay to rest your head on your hands. Should give you a nice release through that low back. When you're ready, come back to your side bend. See if you can use your oblique abdominals to sit all the way up. We're going into mermaid. So both knees are bent. If it's uncomfortable for you in this position, you can actually sit on that pillow. It will help release tension in your hips and low back. And then one arm is on the mat, the other arm reaches up and over into that big side bend. And let's go both directions. This is called lateral flexion when we do these side bends. It's so good for your spine. It should help you release tension in the low back. It's one of my favorite movements. All right, and let's do all of that on the other side. So when you're ready, turn over to the other side. We'll start with our clamshells. So again, this is external rotation of your thigh. Your feet are together. And the most important thing is that you are keeping those hip bones stacked directly on top of each other. That pillow is really there as a reference. I'm trying to lift through that bottom side of my abdominals, which will keep the top side of my abdominals really long. We're looking for keeping that distance from your bottom rib to the top of your hip as much as you can. That will really isolate this movement in your hips rather than your low back. Adding in that internal rotation as we tap our knees and then tap your toes. And then we keep the internal rotation and start to press your thigh back behind you. So the temptation here is that we tend to arch our back and kind of flare the ribs out in the front. So you're using your abdominals to prevent that. Feel your abs drawing in. Check in with your head. I catch myself tensing my neck here, so really try to rest your head on your arms. Now leg is in line with the rest of your body. Keep it straight as you lower and lift. Working those side glutes. And then challenging your abs a little bit more here as we kick forward, keeping your butt right where it is rather than tucking it forward. And then as you kick back, you're closing those frontal ribs to really get a nice squeeze and activation in your butt. Enjoy that big side bend, resting your leg on the mat and thinking of growing a little bit longer from your toes to your fingertips. And then when you're ready, turning your chest towards the floor, adjust as needed so that your entire chest is on your pillow or near it. Rest your hands on the mat, rest your head on the mat, and just breathe into the sides and backs of those ribs. When you're ready, return to your side bend. You will be using your arm and your abdominals a little bit as you come all the way back up to that seated mermaid position. We'll enjoy those mermaid stretches on the other side here. So remember, if you find this uncomfortable for your knees or hips, try sitting on your pillow. You can also try putting both of your legs to the same side, knees together there. Just taking those nice deep breaths, however feels best for you. We just want to keep that oxygen moving through your body. And those deep breaths really help engage the abdominals as well. So each time you exhale, try to find that lift in the pelvic floor and the sensation of tightening a belt around your waist. All right, getting ready to do some work on your hands and knees. We're going to use the pillow for cushion under your knees here. This is into a quadruped position. So try to find your hips directly over your knees, your shoulders directly over your hands. Think about a nice long line from the top of your head to your tailbone. I'm working those shoulder blades again like we did earlier. So let them slide together towards your spine. And then really spread them apart. It helps to think of pushing the floor down towards the floor beneath you. Check in with your head. It tends to want to drop down to the floor. So the whole time, keep your head lifted up. Should be in line with your ribs. Let's do a little cat-cow. Start from your tailbone. Tuck your tailbone in between your legs. Scoop your abdominals up to the sky and allow your head to drop so that you can look at your thighs. And then do the opposite of that. So reach your tailbone out, ribs will reach down to the mat, and eyes will look up to the sky. And then optional here to try what we call disco kitty. And it adds a little side to side movement of your rib cage so that your spine is moving like a jump rope. If that feels a little too much for you today, stick with that normal cat-cow. And if you're trying this jump rope movement through the spine, be sure to go both directions. It should feel really nice. It's again just some spinal mobility. Feel your abdominals supporting your low back this entire time. They're lifting up towards you. And you're just enjoying those nice deep breaths. When you're ready, and maybe even on both sides of that jump rope movement, we'll settle back into our neutral spine, reaching the tailbone and the top of the head away from each other. Then tucking your toes under, we're just going to hover the knees off that pillow. Lift them up a couple of inches. Hold, take a big deep breath in. And then as softly as possible, set your knees back down on that pillow. So we tend to want to kind of crash down onto the pillow. See if you can really slowly lower back down. Think about an equal distribution of weight from your hands to your feet. And again, those abs are lifted up. And then let's get back to some rotation. So we reach one arm up to the sky, open your shoulders to the side wall, and then we thread the needle. Scoop your arm in front of your chest. It's okay to bend your other arm and lower your chest towards the floor. Do that a few times, and then we'll go to the other side. Think of your shoulders stretching in opposite directions here. So the hand on the floor, really push it into the floor as you reach the other arm up to the sky, opening your chest to the side wall. And then allow your elbow to bend with that hand on the mat to get a little deeper towards the floor. Returning both hands to the mat. We're still in that neutral spine. Keep your hips up and let's do a tricep push-up here. So elbows bend. Your goal is to keep your shoulder blades as steady as possible here. So mine are moving a little bit more than they should in the video. Really just a few push-ups there, and then let's take a release. So back to that child's pose. And then a release for your chest, interlocking your fingers behind your back. Lift your arms up towards the ceiling. Maybe add a gentle rock side to side through the arms. And then release that. Let's return to those hands and knees position. We'll add in some lower body work. So start to stretch one leg directly behind you. You should feel your butt engage. Your goal is to keep your hips as still as possible, as well as your upper body. So imagine you're balancing something on your low back. You're trying not to spill anything off that low back. Once you're even on both sides, let's try one arm at a time. You're using your abdominals to help you stabilize here so that your body stays as quiet as possible. When you're ready, try opposite arm as a leg. The temptation for most people here is to really sway that low back down towards the mat. So keep your abdominals lifting up to support your back. That will also help you feel your butt and your shoulders more. Adding in a little more challenge, let's keep one arm and leg up, tap them down to the mat, and lift them right back up. Same arm and leg, keep doing a few more repetitions. I want you to feel that little crease where your low butt meets your high hamstring. Focus there as you lift your thigh. And let's go to the other side. See if you can breathe a little bit deeper. I always catch myself holding my breath here. Then adding a little bit of challenge, keep your arm and leg lifted. Try opening them sideways just a couple of inches. Bring it back to the middle. Makes it a lot harder to balance doing this sideways movement. Do that a few more times. Drawing your navel a little bit deeper. And then be sure that you'll do both sides. Think about your arm and leg stretching in opposite directions. You're trying to become as long as possible so that you keep that space in your low back. And I started flexing my foot on the second side because I was kicking the wall, so just do what you need to for the space that you're in. And then releasing that back side of the body again with our child's pose. Sit your hips back towards your heels. This time I'm going to add a little side release. Take both arms over to one side and try shifting your hips the opposite direction. You should feel a nice release through that entire side body. When you're ready, roll all the way up until you are standing on your knees. Now this is optional. My floor is hard and my mat is not very squishy, so I am going to take my knees back onto that pillow and return to our pelvic tilts that we did earlier. So think of tucking your tailbone forward. Your pubic bone should tip forward. And then just release. So there is a little bit of engagement in the glute as you tuck the tailbone. And then a little bit of release in the glute as you release that. Now your goal is to keep the neutral pelvis. So on the front side of your body, those hip bones again are directly over your pubic bone. See if you can maintain that and start to lean back from your knee. So you have a straight line from the top of your head to your knee. Abdominals are drawing in and arms are reaching straight ahead. Now the next time you hinge back at the knee, hold that hinge. And just like we did earlier, sweep one arm down and back and twist your ribs that direction, looking towards your hand. This is a big stretch on the front of your thigh. Sometimes they start to burn because it's a big stretch. Let's take this into a stretch. So the next time you reach back, place your hand on your heel, and then really press your hips up and forward as the other arm reaches up to the sky, feeling again the support through your abdominals. And return to the center, hinge right back through the center and hold. Both arms lift up and both arms lower down. Let's do that 3 times. And then bring it back up to neutral. This time doing a kneeling squat, lean forward as you send your hips backward toward your heels. So we're now focusing on hinging at your hip socket. So that's that crease right at the front of your hip. We want a nice deep crease there. We're again trying to keep that neutral spine, a long line from the top of the head to the tailbone. Let's see if we can add that arm sweep here. Arm sweeps down and back as you twist your ribs that direction. Look toward your hand. Now you can add a little challenge here by floating your feet off the mat. You can see I'm getting a little bit wobbly as I try to find my stability. And if that's a little too much, keep your feet on the mat. Arms reach all the way up to the sky. Keep your abs in as you roll back down from the top of your head till your hands reach the mat. Let's walk out to do some more push-ups. Hands under shoulders. See if you can keep those shoulder blades spread wide apart as your elbows bend. I'm doing a little bit better job of that now that I'm warmed up. My hips are lower in this version of our push-up than what we did earlier, but if that is too much weight on your wrists or your shoulders, just lift your hips up a little bit higher. That will reduce the challenge. Then take that child's pose, sitting your hips back, taking some deep breaths, and then rolling back up to that kneeling position. Doing a little bit more side body work, so turn one way. We're looking for your forearm to be on your pillow for some cushion. And that pillow is a little unstable, so that's also why we're using it today. It challenges the stability. It's just enough cushion to make it unstable for your balance. Both knees are bent, they're stacked together. Now I want you to really press your arm into the mat enough that you feel your rib cage lift up away from the pillow. So we're looking for a straight line from the top of your head to your tailbone again. Bottom side of your body is working. So the abdominals on the side of your body, your obliques, are keeping your ribs up. And then I want you to imagine you're pulling that pillow towards your knee to activate all the muscles under your armpit. Now let's hold it up and add that thread the needle that we did earlier, scooping your arm in front of your chest, and then returning, reaching the top arm up to the sky. See if we can go a little bit faster with that. Anytime you speed things up, it's going to challenge your stability. So if that's not feeling great, go ahead and take it at your own pace. Now adding a little side bend like we did earlier, lift your ribs a little higher, really push into that bottom arm and reach your top arm all the way overhead. And then just lower your hips back to the mat, take a quick break. To add a little more challenge, you could just leave that release out, keep your hips off the mat the whole time. Back facing away from your pillow, your butt is right in front of your pillow, hands on the mat. This is a reverse plank, so I want you to lift your hips up towards the sky, press your hands down into the floor, and push into your feet to activate all the muscles on the back side of your legs and butt. Now can you hold your hips up in the sky? Aim to keep your pubic bone as high as possible. Working those shoulders again, let your shoulders slide up towards your ears, and then really press them down away from your ears, activating all the muscles under your armpits. So you're controlling the descent as your ribs slide towards the mat, and then pressing your hands into the mat to lift your body back up. That's a tough one, so it's okay if it takes you a minute to catch it. Let's release those muscles, legs straight, arms reach overhead, enjoy that side bend that we did earlier, and a fold forward over your legs. All right, we're going to build up to some more advanced versions of this. Returning to that reverse plank, this is a little hip lift. Now keep those hips up and do a tricep press. So elbows bent and straighten. And you're staying aware of the exercises we just did, keeping your shoulders down away from your ears and your pubic bone as high as you possibly can. Let's take another release. All right, adding on. So again, pushing your hands down into the mat, pressing into your feet and lifting those hips. Now can you keep your hip bones level as you straighten one leg out? Your foot is still on the mat. Bring it back. Alternate sides, and then let's try to straighten one leg and hold. Both legs straighten. And then bring one leg back at a time to that reverse plank. That's a hard one. Now straighten that one leg out, push through the bent leg, twist towards your straight leg and reach your top arm up to the sky. Get a nice side bend. Should feel good. And then another fold forward, arms reach up to the sky, legs straighten out. Let that back side of your legs release. It's okay if you need to keep your knees bent here if you're feeling a little bit tight. All right, now legs are going to stay straight. Push those arms into the mat as you tuck your butt up towards the sky. And then as slowly as possible, lower your hips back down to the mat. The whole back side of your leg is working here, so feel that connection from your heel up through your lower leg to the back of your knee, through your hamstring, up to that little crease where your low butt meets your high hamstring. Draw your lower abs in, scoop that pubic bone up to the sky. Now can you just hold for a few breaths? And slowly lower back down, take again that release forward. Let's add a little twist here. Reaching one arm over to the opposite leg like your saw that we did earlier. And the other arm reaches back, up, and forward. One on each side. Now, after I did this workout, I realized I forgot to do my second side of side bridges. So, You're going to see me do the same side in the video again. I really just copied and pasted that for you so you can watch it. Please roll over to your opposite side than what you did before, and we're going to do those side bridges on the other side. And going into a side bridge, so lift your butt up off the mat, and then with as much control as possible, slowly lower it back down. You should start to feel the side of your butt. You might feel your inner thighs a little bit as well. That whole bottom side of your body is working. So the abdominals on the side of your body, your obliques, are keeping your ribs up. And then I want you to imagine you're pulling that pillow towards your knee to activate all the muscles under your armpit. Now let's hold it up and add that thread the needle that we did earlier, scooping your arm in front of your chest. And then returning, reaching the top arm up to the sky. See if we can go a little bit faster with that. Anytime you speed things up, it's going to challenge your stability. So if that's not feeling great, go ahead and take it at your own pace. Now adding a little side bend like we did earlier, lift your ribs a little higher, really push into that bottom arm and reach your top arm all the way overhead. And then just lower your hips back to the mat, take a quick break. To add a little more challenge, you could just leave that release out, keep your hips off the mat the whole time. It's just kind of placed in between your hands and knees. We might use it again in a moment. We're getting ready for a plank. So again, be sure shoulders are right over your hands, hips are right over your knees, and we're in our neutral spine, feeling the abdominals stay lifted to support your low back. Press one leg back, keep it straight, other leg comes back to meet it. Now the first leg, return your knee to the mat, second leg, knee to the mat. Now reverse that. Second leg straightens out first. Keep alternating. So if you start right, left, the next set, left, right. Once you're even on both sides, find a downward dog by piking your hips up to the sky. Stretch your heels as close to the mat as you can. And really push through your arms and your legs. We're going to scoop your abdominals up to the sky so much that you round through your low back. Start to push your body weight forward towards your hands until you find a plank. Bend your knees, pike those hips back up to your downward dog, and just do that a couple more times. So you're unrolling your spine from your tailbone, scooping your abs up to the sky, rounding your upper back, and then finding that neutral spine in a plank. Once you're in your downward dog again, let's take a walk to stretch through the lower legs. So one knee bends, stretch the opposite heel towards the mat. Alternate sides here. Still breathing. Check in that your ears are staying right next to your biceps, trying not to let your head drop towards the mat. And then again, unrolling your spine, really mobilizing, scooping your navel up to the sky, pushing through your feet as you shift your body weight forward over your hands into a plank. Bend your knees and then lift those hips up towards the sky and a little bit behind you. Do that a few more times. Start to walk your hands back towards your feet. Enjoy a nice fold forward. It's okay to bend your knees if your legs are tight and start to roll all the way up to standing. Arms reach overhead. Think of growing a little taller and then dive forward, chin to chest, rolling down towards the mat one bone at a time. Your hands walk forward on the mat, and I'm going to adjust my pillow back towards me. That's so that if you want to press your knees down onto the pillow for these push-ups, you can. So more challenging to keep your knees off the mat. And just take a few push-ups there. Mine are really small. That's because I'm trying to keep my shoulder blades as wide as possible to stabilize my shoulders in those push-ups. Walk your hands back, roll all the way up, arms reach overhead. Just like we did earlier on our knees, we squat down, keeping that neutral spine. Feet are about hip distance apart, so there's room for 2 fists between your feet. And then let's hold that squat. Take a few pulses here. We're looking for that deep crease in the front of the hip while the abdominals are drawing in to support your back. Then let's stand back up and again dive forward, rounding through your spine, rolling down. Again, you can bend your knees as you roll down. And this time I am going to set my knees on the pillow to do some push-ups. I like to do both because you can see I can get a lot deeper with my knees on the mat, so that gives me a lot more challenge in the range of motion for my push-ups while I'm building up strength to do them in a full plank. Let's take a release here, walking your hands back to your feet, bend your knees, interlace those fingers behind your back and allow your arms to reach up and over your head. Try a gentle twist side to side. Unlock your fingers. Let's grab onto your elbows. Head is just resting in between those arms. Nod your head yes and no. And then slowly roll one bone at a time all the way back up to standing. We're going to test your balance here. So think about stacking your head right over your shoulders, shoulders over ribs, and ribs right on top of your butt. Bend your knees. Feel all 10 toes equally on the floor as you lift your heels off the mat. Find your balance. Breathe. Slowly lower your heels back to the mat. And let's try that again. Knees bend. They straighten. Stay lined up as your heels lift. To add a little bit of challenge here, see if you can go for that walk that we did earlier. So one heel lowers as the opposite knee bends. If that's a little too wobbly for you today, stick with both feet doing the same thing. Finally, can you reach both heels off the mat, circle your arms out to the side and all the way overhead. Slowly lower your heels all the way down to the mat. Your arms float back by your side. And you are done.